support the people who come on stage, and I'm going to invite Olena Tolkacheva from Zod Patronage. We're ready. Perfect. Friends, greetings. I am very grateful for this opportunity to tell you about my experience, to talk about how important it is to do what we do for the people who return from captivity. I will ask for my presentation to be put on the screen right now. I'm sorry. It will be easier for me to peep into my phone. Yes, and you can use the clicker and change the slides. Yeah, I'll try that. It's the first time going to do it myself. It's okay, we will help if needed. Thank you. So, I will talk about our work in the very beginning with the people who come from captivity. We almost always take part in greeting these people when people are released from captivity. It's not at the point where the exchange happens, but at the territory of Ukraine when they come off the bus. First of all, we will look at the lists of people, whether everyone's there, and we tell them that we are a patronage service or helping service. A lot of people who come from captivity know about us because we started working in 2014. But since our regiment is still there, it still works. It has not been destroyed. It's important that we greet the people because somebody from the regiment should come and greet them when they step on the Ukrainian soil for the first time after captivity. Next, we all understand that boys and girls will be sent to a medical establishment, one that's on the list for treating people who are released from captivity. They will do tests, they will see if there are any emergency states, because they will need help. Here we contact doctors and we start our communication in terms of what we can do. After the treatment, of course, we will have rehabilitation and working with families. Sometimes these two things happen together, but actually from the moment when people are captured, we contact the families because the families will want to know what's happening. It's very difficult to find this information, but for the families, it is so important to stay in contact. Sometimes it's not about information, it's about comfort. It doesn't always have to be a professional psychologist. We really lack such people, but some minimal knowledge or minimal skill of communication is something that we can help with. Any doctor from the combat medics can do that, or a person from the service of moral and psychological support, or somebody from military civil cooperation. It depends on how the responsibilities are distributed among these groups for a specific unit. Next. Yes, this is the first moment. It's very important when this first moment when people meet. Of course, there are families, but there are also people see somebody from the union too, from their unit, because that makes them relax. And what we noticed is that they start telling just those first minutes of the meeting, they start telling everything that was happening to them. This is the time that is so very important when special services cannot immediately talk to them all. They ask then people who meet them and greet them to make records so that they can continue then working with such materials. So these first hours, these first days are very important because that person was getting ready to this conversation for months that they spent in captivity. And that conversation really helps to decompress. Well, it is actually decompression. And this is something that has very positive influence. Similarly, yeah, I mentioned that. It's said that we introduce ourselves. Lots of people know us, but if we take some other unit, we will explain that we are representatives of the unit, that we are medical curators, we are not doctors, but we are the people who will solve their problems, because this is actually what we're doing, including the problems related with medicine, rehabilitation, family, documents. So we tell them that we will help bind medicine. We all are perfectly aware of the fact that hospitals will not necessarily have all of the medication that they need or in the quantities that are needed. There can be additional tests that will need to be run, and we help with that. Like MRI is not possible in the military hospital, for example, so we'll have to organize that. Because the people who come from the captivity will not have to do it themselves or burden their family members with that, because it's difficult in the condition they are in, and this is additional money that they will have to pay. So people who are released from captivity should not spend their own money on that. In their first weeks, they have no earnings, they have no documents, no mobile phone. So if we give them a mobile phone, they cannot really start using all of the applications like bank applications, because they will need to have a mobile phone and a bank ID and so on. Number three, we will ask if they have relatives, if they have a phone number to call. If not, then we'll look at our database, and in most cases, it will prove that over the time while the person was in captivity, we will find relatives, or relatives we will have found us, and we can help them get in touch with their families. We ask where the family is situated. If needed, we help them to come to the place where that person will be treated, because the people who are released from captivity will take some time to do all of the tests, and in most cases it's Kiev or Novi Sanjari. Now, for our unit, our people will be taken directly to the military hospital of Internal Affairs, the hospital of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, because this is their umbrella institution. Then, media. It really is a problem with mass media can come to the exchange place and they start asking questions there. And people who come back may unwillingly to talk about things that in future will hurt the comrades who are still in captivity, and people will be feeling ashamed and guilty then, and that will be bad influence. They can be blamed for that by their superiors, and this is even more of a burden. It makes rehabilitation ever much more difficult. That's why we tell the people who come from captivity that they should not talk to the media in the first days at home, but when the message has been agreed by the commanders, by the coordination headquarters, and the intelligence and everyone else, then they are ready for the interview. We go to these interviews together. We explain them that anything that they say can be taken away, can be taken back, so that people don't worry when they tell their stories. Then, the acute question is with the documents. We are very often asked about that. The moment people get off the bus onto Ukrainian soil, they will start asking, what is my passport? What is my military registration? And so on and so forth. And we explain them that we help with the documents. We try to organize it in such a way that the agencies which issue the documents come to the hospitals, collect data, collect information, and bring the documents then to the hospitals. Then, if the people who have returned wish to do it themselves, we can help. Sometimes people would like to go out. They think it's better for them. We help them with the follow-up. Same about payment. We pay from the money that we get through fundraising. We pay for the restoration of the documents because despite the fact that these are people who came back from captivity, according to legislation, you have to pay for your documents to be issued. The documents that the National Guard issue or the armed forces, we will get in touch with these people, with the headquarters or the headquarters of the National Guard. They will bring the documents. We will tell them where the people are. Mobile phones. In the beginning, we had problems when the first exchanges happened. Our National Information Bureau would come and they would give them old phones that only had buttons, but people could do nothing with them, just have a phone call to their relatives. So we just buy smartphones for people who come back, and then they can get in touch with people, renew their accounts, their profiles in social media. We help with the SIM cards. If people remember their passwords, it's always easier. We help transfer contacts, phone numbers. When people get a phone, they will get it with the card, with a phone card. We have contacts of everyone already. We explain that they will be talked to by security service of Ukraine, by the intelligence, because they need information And these people should not be afraid, because they often are. They are afraid of giving testimony, going through the polygraph. And we always tell them that whatever you talk about what had happened to you in captivity, or what you did when you were tortured, you will not be blamed for that, and you will not be punished. You should not be afraid to do the lie detector or to go through this questioning. We try to help them relax, try to help them stop worrying about that, because this is quite a stressor. Because such interviews or interrogations is something that they had when they were kept by the enemy. Some more of the details.
Every time people go for prisoner of war exchanges, they take with them backpacks, and then they gave to the released prisoners of war during the meetings. Besides, we also help them with cash, give them financial assistance in cash, because even if the bus goes from Sumy region to Kiev, for example, the place of prisoner exchange, and it has to stop for gas to fill up, it's important to make sure that those who are getting back home have some cash in their pockets, so that they don't feel still restricted in their rights. But instead, we need to make sure that they feel free, feel adequate. We also recommend them to buy some food. Another thing that I have already shared with you, that during the first days and hours, they want to tell all that happened to them, who they saw, where the whereabouts of different people are the soldiers in detention. In addition to the things that I have already mentioned, they also give them a notepad and a pen for them to make records, write down. They can also write their complaints in terms of their physical condition. Sometimes it's much easier to write about that rather than speak, because we were able to detect horrendous traumas, mutilations. Many people cannot speak about that outright, but this is necessary for the doctors to know about such things immediately in order to provide them with the necessary proper medical assistance. So during the primary checkup, sometimes it's impossible to identify what has happened to these people, what happened to them in captivity, what kind of tortures they went through, before they own up to that and speak about that. We keep informing them about the possibility and necessity to communicate with their military unit, about the restoration of all of the necessary documents, so that when the people are released from prison, they should know that they have the right to financial assistance, compensations, etc. And when representatives of the HR department calls them, they have to communicate with these people, who distribute the telephone numbers and contact details amongst the newly released prisoners of war, because people are very much afraid that some strangers may call them, some journalist reporters may fish out some information from them, but we just quiet them down and relieve them that this information will be passed on to the right people. Further, within hospitals, we begin to collect all of the necessary information about the size of clothes, shoe sizes, or some individual needs and wants of the released prisoners of war, in order to buy the necessary package of clothes, both military and civilian ones, civil ones, comfortable shoes, for example. This takes a sizable amount of money, of course, to cover all of these expenses. And we do fundraisers for that, but it's worth it, because quite often even family members cannot buy anything that their relations released from prison may need. And these boys, they're still disoriented. They don't know where to go, how to buy, and buy whatever they want and need. Nevertheless, the things that they are brought in from the prisoner exchanges, they look as down and out people. Their shoes are kept together with scotch tape or duct tape, sometimes with ropes. In the middle of winter, they may just be wearing t-shirts, slippers. So we need to immediately give them all of the proper seasonal clothes. Concerning treatments, during medical checkups, a lot of numerous diseases and traumas are identified, like very complex bone fractures that have already healed but very poorly, the results of batterings and beatings, muscles, for example, that have been calcinated, and they haven't turned into a bone, but they have become very hardened, solidified as a tissue, and all of that needs to be operated on. And not always it is the case that in the hospital where these people end up, do they have the specialists and possibilities to go for some surgeries, because sometimes these are very, very complex surgical intrusions. And mainly such specialists are only available in profile institutes like the Institute of Traumatology, and unfortunately, all of these surgeries and intrusions are very expensive. We organize such surgeries and additional medical checkups if this is needed. This bar gives you the list of things that we give the released prisoners of war, ranging from underwear to overcoats, if this is winter time, for example, when they're released. In terms of treatment, we get in touch not only with the released prisoners of war, boys and girls, but also with their doctors. They know us, they have known us for a long time, because we have been dealing with these issues since 2014 as a service. And for example, some doctors who are not aware of us and they're not willing to take some material or help from others, from strange organizations, they are always very ready to submit lists, letters to us, via which we can provide them with all of the necessary supplies. Because once again, all of these medical treatment facilities are costly on the one hand, and they do not have enough financial resources to cover all of the necessary needs and wants. We have special panels of doctors who work especially for the sake of the patronage service that I'm here to represent. With the help of these doctors, by their recommendations, we understand how it's best to continue treatments. Next, what's important is to organize psychological relief and consultations. Again, in government-owned hospitals, their resources are not endless, especially when we talk about psychologists and psychotherapists. At the hospital of the Ministry of Interior, we have found a situation that basically they didn't have any specialists who knew how to work with the released prisoners of war. We understand that for Ukraine, it's a major challenge on a large scale that started since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, but still we were able to find some NGOs, CSOs, and we arrange contacts with them, agreements with them. We also align it and agree that with the doctors. And these psychologists and psychotherapists come to the hospitals where our fighters are placed in order to provide them with medical aid, and we keep in touch with them. And if it's necessary, they get appointments at these doctors. If this is psychiatry, then the chief doctor or the head of the department of the hospital where the fighter is placed makes a special referral, and we transfer such heavily affected people to psychiatric hospitals. We cooperate with the hospitals which are private owned. Some psychiatric hospitals of private character. There are here in Ukraine. There are not a few, but not many, but still there are a few. So it all depends on their diagnosis and the availability of free beds. Next, we also work alongside families at the same time because these family members have also had to go through a lot of acute stress, which is why they also require a lot of assistance from psychiatrists and psychologists. Unfortunately, we are also faced with the cases when wives and spouses begin to take drugs or alcohol at the time when their husbands are in captivity, and after their husband is released, we have this double burden. It's a double problem because we need to help both the husband and the wife, which is highly complicated, and it takes a lot of extra effort. I'm not sure that government-owned hospitals would be able to cope with these situations when a whole family requires treatment or therapy. I've already spoken about the panels of doctors, Consilia. When we have all of the prerequisites to take people for rehabilitation, together with the panel of doctors, we identify the medical institution that will be suitable to further rehabilitate a military person in question. And then we begin to make contacts with psychiatrists, psychologists, and they're ready to support these fighters for as long as it takes. Also here you can see the list of the organizations that cooperate with us. Of course, this list is not exhaustive. Oberiev, Dobrobut clinics, Modrichi Center, a strong, powerful one. I'm sure you have heard about it. It was a great opener to us since the time of the full-scale invasion. We were familiarized with the Center of Brain Stimulation. They established a special in-hospital clinic with fantastic conditions. They don't have wards, but they have something like hospital rooms. They even have a swimming pool as a facility. Sometimes these rooms have kitchens so that these fighters can stay there. Ex-combatants can stay there with their families and they can cook for themselves in order to make steps for socialization so that people are encouraged to go shopping, start living as a normal civilian individuals, just like it was before they went to war and before they were taken prisoner. Treatment stage 4, our patronage service, due to the fact that we assume or moderate this process, we assume responsibility for transferring people from hospitals to rehabilitation if doctors are very much pressed for time and they cannot cover such a great number of people, delivering highly qualified assistance in terms of referrals. Just because we do it as a service, we save a lot of time for these ex-combatants, and thus we achieve much better results in terms of rehabilitating these ex-combatants, because time is of critical importance for the people that are coming back from captivity. Here there is something in place which I keep seeing with my own eyes. There's a particular point in time that people have to go through very quickly. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, of course. I will explain it in my own words, but it seems to me that there is this point in time which needs to be covered very speedily so that the people who have come from captivity don't go very low in their psychological condition to avoid getting rollbacks. You have to go through it very quickly, efficiently, and then the condition of these individuals will only be getting better. It's one of the advantages, one of the merits of taking care of these people. A great number of people, problems are tackled by specially designated people. In our case, I'm speaking on behalf of the patronage service. We are dealing with those. Of course, I'm not going to speak more at length about what we have to buy. Additional consultations, I've already spoken about that. We also control the developments in the people's treatment. In their treatments, people do not always feel conscious, are not always aware of what's happening to them. So these people have to be kept check of. You have to explain to them what is happening to them at different stages to avoid a situation where people are discharged from hospitals, go home, and that's it, while they still require rehabilitation. But the doctors failed to mention it to them. The doctors didn't mention any possibilities for that, and the people just go home, and then at home, whatever may happen. So this control and explaining it to ex-combatants at what stage they are, what they require further for their rehabilitation is of critical importance. Also, all of the necessary documents in terms of payments, benefits, that they will have to be paid. That's something that our service is also responsible for. We communicate with the military units for the most part, and only in the cases where it takes the physical presence of the fighter, of the soldiers, then they go and deal with these things, like if they need to leave their signatures on the physical documents. But basically, all of the document work is something that we are dealing with. If it's necessary, we also sell people to other responsible services that will deal with them further. Neurotraumas, neuro injuries is one of the most frequent problems that we are faced with. And here what matters is to select the proper rehabilitation center and not waste time. Next is socialization. We have a great number of different common projects, joint projects. It's like Invictus Games or yachts clubs, which are ready to organize leisure time for these ex-soldiers together with their family members. Organizing recreation for the whole family. For them to gain some new skills like learning to play tennis, whatever. A lot of different organizations are reaching out to us, especially for training facilities, sports centers, which are ready to take on the organization of such activities, training new skills. And this is a wonderful thing to take the soldiers' minds off what has happened to them. I remember pottery classes at the beginning, and now we are all the way to yachting. Work with the families. Naturally, we are always keep in touch. Family members can always reach out to their medical curators in order to solve the problems that cannot get sorted out on them by themselves. When the fighter cannot cope with these problems on their own, when there is lack of mutual understanding, psychologists have to step in and help this communication between the combatants and their families. And here what matters a lot to support such fighters is when they are not capable of helping within their families, when their children get sick, we get involved. We help the treatment and rehabilitation of children in particular. Frequently, we are faced with cancerous diseases developed in the children of these ex-combatants, and we assume responsibility for dealing with these medical conditions because It makes it much easier for these ex-combatants to deal with these medical conditions of their children because they come to realize that they're not alone. That's all for me. Thank you very much indeed for your attention. We thank you, Ms. Olana.